anything? Alright, so this is gonna be my first live stream in like a year. So, sorry if I do poor on this, but let's get started. Today, we're gonna read like a Harry Potter book, maybe. And someone said hello in the chat. Let's get the chat up. Let's go, Darlie. Okay. So we're gonna read Harry Potter until the next Greenville update appears at 1 o'clock today, 1 p.m. So without further ado, let's get it. Also, I'm not gonna have like my face on camera while I'm reading, so bear with me if I slip in my words a bit. Y'all ready? 3, 2, 1. Let me know if y'all like can hear me. All right, thanks. This is my first live stream in a year, about a year and a half. It's been about a year and a half since I streamed. And for anybody that just joined in, or just so basically what we're doing is we're reading a Harry Potter book until the new Greenville update releases. It's probably gonna take as long as we are waiting for the Greenville update. The license brand they release is Lincoln. I'm pretty sure you guys saw. Like if you join the game, you know, there's like a booth. There's like a booth saying like the new update is releasing soon, which today at 1 p.m. Right now the time is 11:19. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm not gonna have my face on camera before I'm reading, just so you guys know. I see one person in chat. Don't see the chat working? Yeah, it's working. I said only one person chat. Anything. Anyway, let's get right into it. 3, 2, 1. So, again, before we do this, the first section we're going to read is The Boy Who Lived. I'm going to show you all the... It's The Boy Who Lived, The Vanishing Glass, The Letters from No One, The Keeper of the Keys. I'm just reading what the pages like they start on, you know. The Boy Who Lived, 1. The Vanishing Glass, 14. The Letters from No One, 26. The Keeper of the Keys, 38. Diagon Alley, 52. The Journey from Platform 9 3/4, 74. The Sorting Hat, 93. The Potions Master, 107. The Midnight Duel, 118. Halloween, 134. Quidditch, 149. The Mirror of Erased, 159. Nicholas Flamel, 175. Also, if I can't pronounce anything, I'm sorry. I have a friend who's a big Harry Potter fan. I'm not, but I'm just reading Harry Potter for her. Norbert the Norwegian Ridgeback, 183. The Forbidden Forest, 196. Through the Trapdoor, 212. Let me know if you guys can hear me. The Man with Two Faces, 231. Yes, there are 17 chapters in this entire book. And this book is 11. Trying to see. I think it's around 245 pages. So that gives us plenty of time to wait for the Greenville update. I'm also going to play the Greenville update to show you guys. So, get back, relax. 3, 2, 1. So we're going to start with The Boy Who Lived at page 1, all the way to The Man with Two Faces in page 231. Let me know if you guys can hear me. So we're starting with chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived. Now, a reminder, if you're just joining this chat, I might have my face on here while I'm reading. So, I don't know why, but I just feel like it. So, sorry if that's going to be an issue for y'all. Let's get started. Mr. and Mrs. Doosley of number 4, Privet Drive, were proud to say that we're perfectly normal. Thank you very much. There were a lot of people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious because they just didn't hold with much nonsense. Mr. Dursley, the director of a firm called Grunning, which made drills, he was a big beefy man and hardly any neck, although he did have a very large mustache, whatever. Mrs. Dursley was thin and blonde and had nearly twice the unusual amount of neck, which came in very useful as she spent so much of her time craning over garden fences, spying on the neighbors. The Dursleys had a small son called Dudley, and the opinion was there was no finer boy anywhere. The Dursleys had everything they wanted, but they also had a secret, and their greatest fear was that somebody would discover it. They didn't think that they would bear it if anyone found out of the Potters. Mrs. Potter was Mrs. Dursley's sister, but they didn't have met for several years. In fact, Mrs. Dursley pretended she didn't have a sister because her sister and her good for nothing husband were as undursley-ish as it was possible to be. The Dursleys shuddered to think that the neighbors would say if the Potters arrived at the street. The Dursleys knew that the Potters had had a small son too, but they had never seen him. Let me know you guys can hear me. I'm on page 2. This boy was another good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing with a child like that. When Mr. and Mrs. Dudley woke up on the dull gray Tuesday our story starts, there was nothing about the cloudy sky outside to suggest that strange and mysterious things would soon be happening all over the country. Mr. Dursley hummed as he picked out the most boring tie for work, and Mrs. Dursley gossiped away happily as she rustled a screaming Dudley into his high chair. None of them noticed a large tawny owl flutter past the window. Also, by the way, we are reading the Sorcerer's Stone, I believe. Yeah, it is the Sorcerer's Stone. We're going to continue reading. Page 2. At 8:30, Mr. Dursley picked up his briefcase, pecked Mrs. Dursley on the cheek, and tried to kiss Dudley goodbye, but missed, because Dudley was now having a tantrum and throwing his cereal at the walls. "Little tight," chortled Mr. Dursley as he left the house. He got into his car and backed out of number 4's drive. It was on the corner of the street that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar. A cat reading a map. For a second, Mr. Dursley didn't realize what he had seen. Then he jerked his head around to look again. There was a tabby cat standing on the corner of Privet Drive, but there wasn't a map in sight. What could he have been thinking of? It must have been a trick of the light. Mr. Dursley blinked and stared at the cat as it started. It stared back as Mr. Dursley drove around the corner and up the road. He watched the cat in his mirror. It was now reading the sign that said Privet Drive. No, looking at the sign. Cats couldn't read maps or signs. Mr. Dursley gave himself a little shake and put the cat out of his mind. As he drove towards town, he thought of nothing except the large order of drills he was hoping to get that day. But on the edge of town, drills were driven out of his mind by something else as he sat in the usual traffic jam. He couldn't help noticing that there seemed to be a lot of strangely dressed people about, people in cloaks. Mr. Dursley could hear people who dressed in funny clothes, the get-ups you saw in young people. He supposed this was some stupid new fashion. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel and his eyes fell on a huddle of these weirdos standing quite close by. They were whispering excitedly together. Mr. Dursley was enraged to see that a couple of them weren't young at all. Why that man had to be older than he was and wearing an emerald green cloak. The nerve of him. But then it struck Mr. Dursley that this probably some silly stunt. These people were obviously collecting for something. Yes, that would be it. The traffic moved on. And a few minutes later, Mr. Dursley arrived in the Runnings Park, his mind back on drills. Also, I am watching the chat, just so you know. I will be reading watching the chat at the same time. Just to let y'all guys know. Mr. Dursley always sat with his back to the window in his office on the ninth floor. If he hadn't, he might have found it harder to concentrate on drills that morning. He didn't see the owls swooping past in broad daylight. The people down in the street did. They pointed and gazed open-mouthed as owl after owl sped overhead. Most of them had never seen an owl, even at nighttime. Mr. Dursley, however, had a perfectly normal owl-free morning. He yelled at 5 different people. He made several important telephone calls and shouted a bit more. He was in a very good mood until lunchtime, when he thought he'd stretch his legs and walk across the road to buy himself a bun from the baker's opposite. He'd forgotten all about the people in cloaks until he passed a group of them next to the baker's. He eyed them angrily as he passed. He didn't know why, but they made him uneasy. This lot were whispering excitedly too, and he couldn't see a single collecting tin. It was on his way back past them, clutching a large donut in his bag, that he caught a few words of what they were saying. The Potters, that's right. That's what I heard. Yes, their son, Harry. Mr. Dursley stopped dead. Fear flooded him. He looked back at the whisperers as if he wanted to say something to them, but thought better of it. He dashed back across the road, hurried up to his office, snapped his secretary not to disturb him, seized his telephone, and almost finished dialing his home number when he changed his mind. He put the receiver back down and stroked his mustache, thinking, no, he was being stupid. Potter wasn't being an unusual name. There were lots of people called Potter who had a son called Harry. Come to think of it, he wasn't even sure his nephew was called Harry. He never ever seen the boy. It might have been Harvey or Harold. There was no point in worrying. Mrs. Doosley, she always got so upset at any mention of her sister. He didn't blame her if he had a sister like that. But all the same, those people in clothes. He found it a lot harder to concentrate on drills that afternoon. And when he left the building at 5 o'clock, he was still so worried that he walked straight into someone just outside the door. Sorry, he grunted, as the tiny old man stumbled and almost fell. It was a few seconds before Mr. Dursley realized that the man was wearing a violet cloak. He didn't seem at all upset at being almost knocked down to the ground. On the contrary, his face split into a wide smile, and he said in a squeaky voice that made passers-by stare, "Don't worry, don't be sorry, my dear sir, for nothing could upset me today. Rejoice, for you know who has gone at last. Even muggles like yourself should be celebrating this happy day." And the old man hugged Mr. Dursley around the middle and walked off. Mr. Dursley stood rooted to the spot. He had been hugged by a complete stranger. He also thought that he had been a muggle, whatever that was. He rattled to he rattled he hurried to his car and set off home. He hoping he was imagining things, which he let himself into the house. He's he saw st- he was still determined not to mention anything to his wife. Mrs. Dursley had had a nice normal day. She told him over dinner all about Mrs. Next Door's problems with her daughter and how Dudley had learned a new word, shanked. Shanked. Mr. Dursley tried to act normally when Dudley had been put to bed. He went into the living room in time to catch the last report on the evening news. And finally, bird watchers everywhere have been reported that the nation's owls have been behaving very unusually today, although owls normally hunt at night and are hardly ever seen in daylight. There have been hundreds of sightings of these birds flying in every direction since sunrise. Experts are unable to explain why the owls have suddenly changed their sleeping pattern. The news reader allowed themselves to grin. Most mysterious are now over over to Jim McGuffin with the weather. Gonna be any more showers of owls tonight, Jim? Well, Ted, said the weatherman. I don't know about that, but it's not only the owls that are acting oddly today. Viewers as far apart as Kent, Yorkshire, and Dundee have been phoning in to tell me that instead of the rain I promised yesterday, they had a downpour of shooting stars. Perhaps people have been celebrating bonfire night early. It's not until next week, folks, but I can promise a wet night tonight. Mr. Dursley sat frozen in his armchair, shooting stars all over Britain. Owls flying by daylight, mysterious people in clothes all over the place, and a whisper about the Potters. Mrs. Dursley came into the living room carrying 2 cups of tea. It was no good. He had to say something to her. He cleared his throat nervously. Petunia, dear, you haven't heard from your sister lately, have you? I'm gonna go get my glasses because it's struggling for me to read. I don't know why I'm not reading with glasses anyway. Be right back. Let's just look. Looks all good. Let's continue reading. As the unexpected had accepted, Mrs. Dursley looked shocked and angry. After all, they normally pretended she didn't have a sister. No, she said sharply. Why? Funny stuff on the news, Mr. Dursley mumbled. Owls, shooting stars. And there were a lot of funny looking people in the town today. So? Snapped Miss Dursley. Well, I just thought maybe it was something to do with, her a lot. Mrs. Dursley sipped her tea through pursed lips. Mr. Dursley wondered whether he dared to tell her he heard the name Potter. He decided he didn't dare. Instead, he said, as casually as he could, "Their son, he'd be about Dudley's age now, wouldn't he?" "I suppose so," said Mrs. Dursley stiffly. "What's his name again?" "Howard, isn't it?" "Harry. Nasty. Common sense, if you ask me." "Oh, yes," said Mrs. Dursley. Mr. Dursley, his heart sinking horribly. "Yes, I quite agree." He didn't say another word on the subject as they went upstairs to bed. while Mrs. Dursley was in the bathroom. Mr. Dursley crept to the bedroom window and peered down into the front garden. The cat was still there. It was staring down Privet Drive as though it was waiting for something. Wasn't he imagining things? Could all this have anything to do with the Potters? If it did, it got out. If it got out that they were related to a pair of, well, he didn't think he could bear it. The Dursleys got into bed. Mrs. Dursley fell asleep quickly, but Mr. Dursley lay awake, turning it all over in his mind. His feet comforting thought he fell asleep that was if the Potters were involved, there was no reason for them to come near him and Mrs. Dursley. The Potters knew very well what he and Petunia thought about them and their kind. He couldn't see how he and Petunia could get mixed up in anything that might be going on. He yawned and turned over. It couldn't affect them. How very wrong he was. Mr. Dursley might have been drifting into an uneasy sleep, but the cat on the wall outside was showing no sign of sleepiness. It was sitting as still as a statue, its eyes fixed unblinkingly on the far corner of Privet Drive. It didn't so much as quiver when a car door slammed in the next street, nor when two owls swooped overhead. In fact, it was nearly midnight before the cat moved at all. A man appeared on the corner the cat had been watching. Appeared so suddenly and silently you have thought he just popped out of the ground. The eat's tails twitched and eyes narrowed. Nothing like this man had been ever seen in Privet Drive. He was tall, thin, and very old, judging by the silver of his hair and beard, which were both long enough to tuck into his belt. He was wearing long robes, a purple cloak which swept to the ground, high heeled, buckled boots. His blue eyes were light, bright, sparkling behind half-moon spectacles, and his nose was very, very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. The man's name was Albus Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore didn't even seem to realize that he had just arrived from the street where everything, from his house to his boots, was unwelcome. He was busy rummaging in his cloak, looking for something. But he did seem to realize he was being watched, because he looked up suddenly at the cat, which was still staring at him from the other end of the street. For some reason, the sight of the cat seemed to amuse him. He chuckled and muttered, "I should have known." He had found out what he was looking for in his inside pocket. He seemed to be a silver cigarette lighter. He flickered it open, held it up in the air, and clicked it. The nearest street lamp went out with a little pop. He clicked it again. The next lamp flickered into darkness. 12 times he clicked the putt-outer, until the only lights left in the whole street were two tiny pinpricks in the distance, which were the eyes of the cat watching him. If anyone looked out of the window now, even beady-eyed Mrs. Dursley, they wouldn't have been able to see anything that was happening down on the pavement. I'll answer in a minute. Dumbledore slipped on the putt-outer back inside his cloak and set out down the streets towards number 4, where he sat down on the wall next to the cat. He didn't look at it, but after a moment, he spoke to it. I gotta answer my phone. Alright. Where is it? Okay. Fancy seeing you here, Professor McGonagall. He turned to smile at the tabby, but it had gone. Instead, he was smiling at a rather severe-looking woman who was wearing square glasses, exactly the shape of markings the cat had around its eyes. She too, wearing a cloak, an emerald one. Her black hair was drawn into a tight bun. She looked distantly ruffled. How did you know it was me? She asked. My dear professor, I've never seen a cat sit so stiffly. You must be, you must be stiff if you've been sitting on a brick wall all day," said Professor McGonagall. "All day, when when you could have passed, when you could have been celebrating. I must have passed a dozen feasts and parties on my way here." Professor McGonagall sniffed angrily. "Oh yes, everyone's celebrating, all right," she said impatiently. "You you'd think they'd be a bit more careful, but no. Even the Muggles have noticed something's going on. It was on their news." She jerked her head back at Dursley's dark living room window. "I heard it. Flocks of owls, shooting stars. Well, they're not completely stupid. They were bound to notice something. Shooting stars were down in Kent. I'll bet that was Delu's Diggle. He had never he never had much sense." "All right, thank you." "You can't blame them," said Dumbledore gently. "We've had precious little time to celebrate for 11 years." "I know that," said Professor McGonagall irritably. But that's no reason to lose our heads. People have been downright careless out on the streets in broad daylight, not even dressed in Muggle clothes, swapping rumors." She threw a sharp sideways glance at Dumbledore here, as though hoping he was going to tell her something, but he didn't. So she went on. "A fine thing it would be if on the very next day, you know who seems to have disappeared at last. The Muggles found out us all. I suppose he really has gone, Dumbledore." "He certainly seems so," said Dumbledore. We have much thankful for. We have much to be thankful for. Would you care for a sugared lemon?" "A what?" "A sugared lemon. They're a kind of Muggle sweet I'm rather fond of." "No, thank you," said Professor McGonagall coldly, as though she didn't think this was the moment for sugared lemons. "As I say, if you know who has gone." "My dear Professor, surely a sensible person like yourself can call him by his name. All this you know who nonsense. For 11 years I've been trying to persuade people to call him by his proper name." "Voldemort." Professor McGonagall flinched, but Dumbledore, who was unsticking 2 sugared lemons, seemed not to notice. "It all gets so confusing. If we kept saying you know who, I've never seen any reason to be afraid of saying Voldemort's name." "I know you haven't," said Professor McGonagall, sounding half exasperated, half admired. "But you're different. Everyone knows you're only the you know. Oh, all night. Oh, all right." Voldemort was frightened of. You flatter me," said Dumbledore calmly. "Voldemort had powers I will never have. Only because you're too, well, noble to use them. It's lucky, it's dark. I haven't blushed so much since Madame Pomfrey told me she liked my new earmuffs. I know." Professor McGonagall shot a sharp look at Dumbledore and said, "The owls are nothing to the rumors that are flying around. You know what everyone's saying about why he's disappeared, about what finally stopped him." It seemed that Professor McGonagall had reached a point she was almost anxious to discuss. The real reason she had been waiting on the cold hard wall all day, for neither as a cat nor as a woman had she fixed Dumbledore with such piercing stare as she did now. It was plain that whatever everyone was saying, she was not going to believe it until Dumbledore told her it was the truth. Dumbledore, however, was choosing another sherbet lemon and did not answer. What they're saying," she pressed on, "is that Knight Voldemort turned up in Godric's Hollow. He was sent to find the Potters. The rumor is that Lily and James Potter are are that they're dead. Dumbledore bowed his head. Professor McGonagall gasped. Lily and James. I can't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. Oh, Albus. Dumbledore reached out and patted her on the shoulder. I know. I know, he said heavily. Professor McGonagall's voice trembled as she went on. That's not all. They're saying he tried to kill the Potter's son, Harry, but he couldn't. He couldn't kill that little boy. No one knows why or how, but they're saying that he couldn't kill Harry Potter. Voldemort's power somehow broke, and that's why he's gone. Dumbledore nodded glumly. It's true, faltered Professor McGonagall. After all he's done, all the people he's killed, he couldn't kill a little boy. It's just astounding. Of all the things to stop him, but how in the name of heaven did Harry survive? We can only guess, said Dumbledore. We may never know. Professor McGonagall pulled out a lace handkerchief and dabbed her eyes beneath her spectacles. Dumbledore gave him a great sniff as he took a golden watch from his pocket and examined it. It was very odd watch. It had 12 hands, but no numbers. Instead, little planets were moving around the edge. It must have been an sense to Dumbledore, though, because he put it back in his pocket and said, Hagrid's like, I suppose it was he who told you I'd be here, by the way. Yes, said Professor McGonagall. And I don't suppose you're going to tell me why you're here, of all places. I've come to bring Harry to his aunt and uncle. They're the only family he has left now. You can't mean the people who live here, cried Professor McGonagall, jumping to her feet and pointing at number 4. Dumbledore, you can't. I've been watching them all day. You can find 2 people who are less like us, and they've got this son. I saw him kicking his mother all the way up the street, screaming for sweets. Harry Potter came and lived here. It's the best place for him, said Dumbledore firmly. His aunt and uncle will be able to explain everything to him when he's older. I've written them a letter. A letter? Repeated Professor McGonagall faintly, sitting down back on the wall. Really? Dumbledore, you think you can explain all this in a letter? These people will never understand him. He will be famous, a legend. I wouldn't be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day in future. There would be looks written about Harry. Every child in our world will know his name. Exactly, said Dumbledore, looking very seriously over the top of his hat-brim glasses. It will be enough to turn any boy's head. Famous before he can walk and talk. Famous for something he won't even remember. Can't you see how better off he'll be growing up away from all that until he's ready to take it? Professor McGonagall opened her mouth, changed her mind, swallowed, and then said, Yes, you're right. Of course. But how's the boy getting here? Dumbledore. She eyed his cloak, suddenly as though she thought he might be hiding Harry underneath it. Hagrid's bringing him. You think wise to trust Hagrid with something as important as this? I wouldn't trust Hagrid with my life, said Dumbledore. I'm not saying his heart is in the right place, said Professor McGonagall grudgingly. You can't pretend he's not careless. He does tend to... What was that? A low rumbling sound had broken the silence around them. It grew steadily louder. As they looked up and down the street for some sign of headlight, it swelled to a roar as they both looked up at the sky, and a huge motorcycle fell out of the air and landed on the road in front of them. If the motorbike was huge, it was nothing to the man sitting astride it. It was almost twice as tall as a normal man, at least 5 times as wide. He looked simply too big to be allowed, and so wild. Long tangles of bushy black hair and beard hid most of his face. He had hands on the side of dustbin lids, and his feet in their leather boots were baby dolphins. In his vast, muscular arms were holding a bundle of blankets. Hagrid, said Dumbledore, sounding relieved. At last, where did you get that motorbike? Borrowed it, Professor Dumbledore, sir, said the giant, climbing carefully off the motorbike as he spoke. Young Sirius Black lent it to me. I've got him, sir. No problems. Were there? No, sir. House was almost destroyed, but I got him all right before the muggles started swarming around. He fell asleep as we were flying over Bristol. Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall bent forward over the bundle of blankets. Inside, just visible, was a baby boy, fast asleep, under a tuft of jet black hair over his forehead. They could see a curiously shaped cut like a bolt of lightning. Is that where? whispered Miss Professor McGonagall. Yes, said Dumbledore. He'll have that scar forever. Could you do something about it, Dumbledore? Even if I could, I wouldn't. Scars come in useful. I have one myself above my left knee, which is a perfect map of the London Underground. Well, give him here, Hagrid. We better get this over with. Dumbledore took Harry's hair in his arm and turned towards Dursley's house. Could I say goodbye to him, sir? Asked Hagrid. He bent his great, shaggy over Harry and gave him what must have been a very scratchy, whispery kiss. Then suddenly, Hagrid let out a howl like a wounded dog. Shh! His Professor McGonagall. You'll wake the muggles. Sorry, sobbed Hagrid, taking out a large spotted handkerchief and burying his face in it. But I can't stand it. Lily and James dead, and poor little Harry off to live with muggles. Yes, it's all very sad. But get a grip on yourself. Hagrid, or we'll be found. Professor McGonagall whispered, patting Hagrid gingerly on the arm as Dumbledore stepped over the little garden wall and walked to the front door. He laid Harry gently on the doorstep, took a letter out of his cloak, tucked it inside Harry's blankets, and then came back to the other two. For a full minute, the three of them stood and looked at the little bundle. Hagrid's shoulders shook. Professor McGonagall blinked furiously, and the twinkling light that usually shone up from Dumbledore's eyes seemed to have gone out. Well, said Dumbledore finally, that's that. We've no business staying here. We may as well go and join the celebration. Yes, Hagrid, in a very muffled voice. I'd best get this bike away. Good night, Professor McGonagall. Professor Dumbledore, sure. Wiping his streaming eyes on his jagged sleeve, Hagrid swung himself onto the motorbike and kicked the engine into the light. With a roar, it rose into the air and off into the night. I shall see you soon, I expect, Professor McGonagall, said Dumbledore, nodding to her. Professor McGonagall blew her nose in reply. Dumbledore turned and walked back down the street. On the corner, he stopped down and looked at the silver plug outer. He clicked it once, and 12 balls of light sped back to her street lamps, so that Privet Drive glowed suddenly orange, and he could make it out a tabby cat slipping around the corner at the other end of the street. He could just see the bundle of blankets on the step of number 4. Good luck, Harry, he murmured. He turned on his heel, with a switch of his cloak, he was gone. A breeze ruffled the neat hedges of Privet Drive, which lay silent and tidy under the inky sky. The very last place you would expect astonishing things to happen. Harry Potter rolled over inside his blankets, without waking up. One small hand closed on the letter beside him, and he slept on, not knowing he was special, not knowing he was famous, not knowing he would be woken in a few hours' time by Mrs. Dursley's scream as she opened the front door to pull out the milk bottle, nor that he would spend the next few weeks being prodded and pinched by his cousin Dudley. He couldn't know at this very moment. People meeting him in secret all over the country were holding up their glasses and saying in hushed voices, "To Harry Potter, the boy who lived." Alright, our next chapter is the Wishing Last, chapter 2. I don't see anyone watching just yet. If you are watching, make sure you leave a like. Nearly 10 years had passed since the Dursleys had woken up to find their nephew on the front step. But Privet Drive had hardly changed at all. The sun rose on the same tidy front garden and lit up the brass number 4 on Dursley's front door. I crept into their living room, which had almost exactly the same as had been on the night when Mr. Dursley had seen the fateful news report about the owls. Only the photographs on the mantelpiece really showed how much time had passed. 10 years ago, there had been lots of pictures of what looked like a large pink ball wearing different colored bobble hats. But Dudley Dursley was no longer a baby, and now the photographs showed a large blond boy riding his first bicycle on the roundabout at the fair, playing his computer game with his father, being hugged and kissed by his mother. The room held no sign at all that another boy lived in the house too. Yet Harry Potter was still there, asleep at the moment, but not for long. His Aunt Petunia was awake, and it was her shrill voice which made it the first time of the day. Up! Get up! Now! Harry woke up with a start. His aunt rapped on the door again. Ah! She screeched. Harry heard her walking towards the kitchen and then the sound of the frying pan being put on the cooker. He rolled onto his bag and tried to remember the dream he had been having. It had been a good one. There had been a flying motorbike in it. He had a funny feeling he had the same dream before. His arm was back outside the door. Are you up yet? She demanded. Nearly, said Harry. We'll get a move on. I want to see you look after the bacon. And don't you dare let it burn. I want everything perfect on Daddy's birthday. Harry groaned. What did you say? His aunt snapped through the door. Nothing. Dudley's birthday. How could he have forgotten? Harry got slowly out of bed and started looking for socks. He found a pair under his bed, and after pulling a spider off one of them, he put them on. Harry was used to spiders because the cupboard under the stairs was full of them, and that was where he slept. When he dressed, he went down into the hall, into the kitchen. The table was almost hidden beneath all Dudley's birthday presents. It looked as though Dudley had got the new computer he wanted, not to mention the second television and the racing bike. Exactly why Dudley wanted a racing bike was a mystery to Harry, as Dudley was very fat and hated exercise, unless of course it involved punching somebody. Dudley's favorite punch bag was Harry, but he couldn't often catch him. Harry didn't look it, but he was very fast. Perhaps it had something to do with living in a dark cupboard. But Harry had always been small and skinny for his age. He looked even smaller and skinnier than he really was because all he had to wear were old clothes of Dudley's, and Dudley was about 4 times bigger than he was. Harry had a thin face, knobbly knees, black hair, and bright green eyes. He wore round glass held together with a lot of sellotape because of all the times Dudley had punched him on the nose. The only thing Harry liked about his own appearance was a very thin scar on his forehead, which shaped like a bolt of lightning. He had had it as long as he could remember, and the first question he could ever remember asking Aunt Petunia was how he had got it. In the car crash when your parents died, she had said. Then don't ask questions. Don't ask questions. That was the first rule for a quiet life with Dursleys. Uncle Vernon entered the kitchen as Harry was turning over the bacon. Comb your hair, he barked, by the way of a morning greeting. About once a week, Uncle Vernon, over the top of his newspaper, shouted that Harry needed a haircut. Harry must have had more haircuts than the rest of the boys in his class put together, but it made no difference. His hair simply grew up that way, all over the place. Harry was frying eggs by the time Dudley arrived in the kitchen. With his mother, Dudley looked a lot like Uncle Vernon. He had a large pink face, not much neck, small, watery blue eyes, and thick, blonde hair that lay smoothly on his fit, fat head. Aunt Petunia often said that Dooley looked like a baby angel. Harry often said that Dooley looked like a pig in a wig. Harry put the plates of egg and bacon on the table, which was difficult as there wasn't much room. Dooley, meanwhile, was counting his presents. His face fell. 36, he said, looking up at his mother and father. That's two less than last year. Darling, you have. Sorry. Darling, you haven't counted. Ah, darling, you haven't counted only Margie's present. See, it's here. Under this big one from Mommy and Daddy. All right, 37, then, said Lily, going red in the face. Harry could see a huge Dewey tantrum coming on. Began wolfing down. I need a minute, y'all. Hold up. I began wolfing out his bacon as fast as possible, in case Dooley turned the table over. Aunt Petunia obviously scented danger too, because she said quickly, "And and we'll buy you another two presents while we're out today. How's that pumpkin? Two more presents, is that all right?" Dooley thought for a moment. It looked like hard work. Finally, he said slowly, "So I have 30, 39 sweet turns," said Aunt Petunia. Oh, Dooley sat down heavily and grabbed the nearest parcel. Uh, all right then. Uncle Vernon chuckled. Lil Tyke wants his money's worth, just like his father. Thought boy, Dooley. He ruffled Dooley's hair. At the moment, the telephone rang and Aunt Petunia went to answer it, while Harry and Uncle Vernon watched Dooley unwrap the racing bike. A scene camera. A signed camera. A remote-controlled airplane. 16 new computer games. And a video recorder. He was ripping the paper off a gold wristwatch when Aunt Petunia came back from the telephone, looking both angry and worried. "Bad news, Vernon," she said. Mrs. Figgs broke her leg. She can't take him." She jerked her head in Harry's direction. Dooley's mouth fell open in horror, and Harry gave him a leap. Every every year on Dooley's birthday, his parents took him and friend out for the day, to adventure parks, hamburger bars, or the cinema. Every year, Harry was left behind with Mrs. Figg, a mad old lady who lived 2 streets away. Harry hated it there. The whole house smelled of cabbage, and Mrs. Figg made him look like photographs of all the cats she'd ever owned. "Now what?" said Aunt Petunia, looking furiously at Harry as though he planned this. Harry knew ought to feel sorry that Mrs. Figg had broken her leg, but it wasn't easy when he reminded himself it would be a whole year before he had to look at Tibble Snowy, Mr. Paws, and Tufty again. "We could phone Marge," Uncle Vernon suggested. "Don't be silly, Vernon. She hates the boy." The Dursleys often spoke about Harry like this, as though he wasn't there, or rather as though he was something very nasty that couldn't understand him, like a slug. "What about what's her name? Your friend It won't. It won't. On holiday in Majoria, snapped off Petunia. You could you could just leave me here. Harry Harry put in hopefully. He'd be able to watch what he wanted on his television for a change, and maybe even have a go on Dooley's computer. Aunt Petunia looked as though he swallowed a lemon, just swallowed a lemon, and come back and find the house in ruins. She snarled. I wouldn't blow I wouldn't blow up the house, said Harry, but they weren't listening. I suppose we could take him to the zoo, said Aunt Petunia slowly, and leave him up in the car. That car's new. He's not sitting in it alone. Dooley began to cry loudly. In fact, he wasn't really crying. It had been years since he really cried. But he knew that if he screwed up his face and wailed, his mother would give him anything he wanted. Dinky Dubby Dub, don't cry. Mummy will let him spoil a special day, she cried, flinging her arm around him. I don't want him to come. Dooley yelled between huge pretend sobs. Harry and Nan, he always spoils everything. He shot Harry a nasty grin through the gap in his father's arms. Just then the doorbell rang. Oh, good Lord, they're here, and Aunt Petunia frantically. And a moment later, Dooley's best friend, Piers Polkiss, walked in with his mother. Piers was a scrawny boy with a face like a rat. He was usually the one who held people's arms behind their backs. While Dooley hit them, Dooley stopped pretending to cry at once. Half an hour later, Harry, who couldn't believe his luck, was sitting in the back of the Dursley's car, with Piers and Dudley on the way to the zoo for the first time in his life. His aunt and uncle hadn't been able to think of anything else to do with him, but before they left, Uncle Vernon had taken Harry aside. I'm warning you, he had said, putting his large purple face right up close to Harry's. I'm warning you now, boy. Any funny business, anything at all, and you'll be in the cupboard from now till Christmas. I'm not going to do anything, said Harry honestly. While Uncle Vernon didn't believe him, no one ever did. The problem was, strange things often happen around Harry, and it was just no good telling him the Dursleys he didn't make them happen. Once, Aunt Petunia, tired of Harry coming back from the barber's looking as though he hadn't been at all. He had taken a pair of kitchen scissors to cut his hair, so short. He was almost bald except for his fringe, in which he left to hide that horrible scar. Dooley had laughed himself silly at Harry, who had spent a sleepless night imagining school the next day, where he was already laughed at for his baggy clothes and sellotape glasses. Next morning, however, he had got up to find his hair exactly as he had been before. Aunt Petunia had sheared it off. He had been given a week in his cupboard for this, even though he tried to explain that he couldn't explain how it grown back so quickly. Another time, Aunt Petunia had been trying to force him into a revolting old jumper of Dudley's brown with orange baubles. The harder she tried to pull it over his head, the smaller it seemed to become, until finally it might have been fit of the glove puppet, but certainly wouldn't fit. Harry, Aunt Petunia, had decided it must have shrunk in the wash, and to his great relief, Harry wasn't punished. On the other hand, he got into terrible trouble for being found on the roof of the school kitchen. Dooley's gang had chased him as usual, when as much to Harry's surprise as anyone else's. There was sitting on the chimney. The Dursleys had received a very angry letter from Harry's headmistress, telling him Harry had been climbing school buildings. But all he tried to do, as he shouted Uncle Vernon through the locked door of his cupboard, was jump behind the big bins outside the kitchen doors. Harry, his favorite subjects. This morning it was motorbikes roaring along the maniacs, the young hoodlums, he said as the motorbike overtook him. I had a dream about a motorbike, said Harry, remembering suddenly. It was flying. Uncle Vernon nearly crashed into the car in front. He turned right around in his seat and yelled at Harry, his face like a gigantic beetroot with a mustache. Motorbikes don't fly! Dooley and Pierce snickered. But I know they don't, said Harry. It was only a dream. But he wished he had said anything. Anything, if there was one thing. And the Dursley hated even more. Oh. Where was I? More than his asking questions. Oh shoot. It was his talking about anything acting away or a shit, no matter if it was a dream or even a cartoon. They seemed to think he might be in dangerous ideas. Oh, I read at the wrong. I read the wrong thing. As I was supposed to read, suppose that's the wind. Yeah, I got confused. I might have to start over. But I'll start at. Harry supposed that the wind might have caught him in mid jump, but today was nothing was going to go wrong. It was even worth being that with Dudley and Piers to be spending the day somewhere that wasn't school. His cupboard or Mrs. Figg's cabbage smelling living room. While he drove, Uncle Vernon complained to Aunt Petunia. He liked to complain that things people at work, Harry the council, Harry the bank, and Harry were just a few of his favorite subjects. It was a very sunny Saturday, and the zoo was crowded with families. The Dursleys bought Dudley and Pierce large chocolate ice creams at the entrance, and then because the smiling lady in the van asked Harry what he wanted before Nick and Harry him anyway, they bought him a cheap lemon iced lolly. It wasn't bad either. Harry stopped licking it as they watched the gorilla scratching its head, looking remarkably at Dudley, except that it wasn't blonde. Harry had the best morning he had in a long time. He was careful to walk a little way apart from the Dursleys so that Dudley and Piers, who were starting to get bored with the animals by lunchtime, wouldn't fall back on their favorite hobby of hitting him. They ate the zoo restaurant, and when Dudley had a tantrum because his knickerbocker glory wasn't big enough, Uncle Vernon bought him another one, and Harry was allowed to finish the first. Harry felt afterwards that he should have known it was all too good to last. After lunch, they went to the reptile house. It was cool and dark in there, with lit windows all along the wall. Behind the glass, all sorts of lizards and snakes were crawling and slithering over beds of wood and stone. Dooley and Piers wanted to see huge poisonous cobras and thick man-crushing pythons. Dooley found the largest snake in the place. It could have been wrapped on his body twice around Uncle Vernon's car and crushed it into dustbin. But at the moment, it didn't look in the mood. In fact, it was fast asleep. Dooley stood with his nose pressed against the glass, staring at the glistening brown coils. Make it move, he whined at his father. Uncle Vernon tapped on the glass, but the snake didn't budge. Do it again, Dooley ordered. Uncle Vernon rapped the glass smartly with his knuckles, but the snake just moved on. Hold up, I gotta answer my phone. And good news, guys, we just hit 1 hour. 60 minutes. 1 hour. Okay. I just had to answer my phone. Anyways, moving on. Dooley quickly found the largest snake in the place. It could have been wrapped its body twice around Uncle Vernon's car and crushed it into a dustbin, but at the moment it didn't look in the mood. In fact, it was fast asleep. Dooley stood with his nose pressed against the glass, staring at the glistening brown coils. Make it, make it move. Oh, that's not where I read. This is boring. Dooley moaned. He shuffled away. Harry moved in front of the tank and looked intently at the snake. He wouldn't have been surprised if it had died of boredom itself. No company except stupid people drumming their fingers on the glass trying to disturb it all day long. It was worse than having a cupboard as a bedroom, where the only visitor was all Petunia hammering on the door to wake you up. At least you got to visit the rest of the house. The snake suddenly opened its beady eyes slowly, very slowly, and raised its head until its eyes were on a level with Harry's. It winked. Harry stared, then he looked quickly around to see if anyone was watching. They weren't. He looked back at the snake and winked too. The snake jerked its head toward Uncle Vernon and Julie, then raised its eyes to the ceiling. It gave Harry a look that said quite plainly, "I get that all the time." "I know," Harry murmured through the glass, though he wasn't sure that the snake could hear. It must have been really annoying. The snake nodded vigorously. "Where did you come from, anyway?" Harry asked. The snake jabbed at its tail in a little sign next to the glass. Harry peered at it. Boa constrictor, Brazil. Was it nice there? The boa constrictor jabbed its tail at the sign again, and Harry read on. This specimen was bred in the zoo. Oh, I see. So you've never been to Brazil? As the snake shook its head, a deafening shout behind Harry made both of them jump. Doodley! Mr. Dursley! Come look at this snake! You won't believe what it's doing! Dooley came waddling towards them as fast as he could. Out of the way, you, he said, punching Harry. I'm trying not to laugh at this. Punching Harry in the ribs. Caught by surprise. Fell on the concrete floor. Caught by surprise, Harry fell on the concrete floor. What came next happened so fast no one saw how it happened. 1 second, Piers and Dooley were leaning right up close to the glass. The next they had leaped back with howls of horror. Harry sat up and gasped. The glass front of the boa constrictor's tank had vanished. The great snake was uncoiling itself rapidly, slithering out onto the floor. People, okay. People throughout the reptile house screamed and started running for the exit. As the snake slid swiftly past him, Harry could have a sworn low. Hissing voice said, "Brazil, here I come." "Thanks, amigo." The keeper of the reptile house was in shock. But the glass, he kept saying, "Where did the glass go?" The zoo director himself made Aunt Petunia a cup of strong sweet tea while he apologized over and over again. Piers and Dooley could only gibber. As far as Harry had seen, the snake hadn't done anything except snap playfully at heels as it passed. But by the time they were all back in Uncle Vernon's car, Dooley was telling him how bad it nearly bitten off his leg. While Piers was swearing it had tried to squeeze him to death. But the worst of all, for Harry at least, was Piers calming down enough to say, Harry's talking to it. Weren't you, Harry? Uncle Vernon waited until Piers was safely out of the house before starting on Harry. He was so angry he could hardly speak. He managed to say, "Go, cupboard, stay, no meals," before he collapsed into a chair, and Aunt Petunia had to run and get him a large brandy. Harry laid in his dark cupboard much later, wishing that he had a watch. He didn't know what time it was, and he couldn't be sure the Dursleys weren't asleep yet. Until they were, they, until they were, he couldn't risk sneaking to the kitchen for some food. He lived with the Dursleys almost 10 years, his 10 miserable years, as long as he could remember. Ever since he'd been a baby and his parents had died in that crash. He couldn't remember being in the car when his parents had died. Sometimes he strained his memory during long hours in his cupboard. He came up with a strange vision, a blinding flash of green light, and burning pain on his forehead. This, he supposed, was the crash. Though he couldn't imagine where all the green light came from, he couldn't remember his parents at all. His aunt and uncle never spoke about them, and of course he was forbidden to ask questions. There were no photographs of them in the house. When he had been younger, Harry had dreamed of some unknown relation coming to take him away, but it had never happened. The Dursleys were his only family. Yet sometimes he thought, or maybe hoped, that the strangers in the street seemed to know him. Very strange strangers they were too. A tiny man in a violet top hat had bowed him once, while out shopping with Aunt Petunia and Dooley, after asking Harry furiously if he knew the man. Aunt Petunia had rushed him out of the shop without buying anything. A wild-looking old woman dressed all in green had waved merrily at him once on a bus. A bald man in a very long purple coat had actually shaken his hand in the street the other day, and then walked away without a word. The weirdest thing about all these people was the way they seemed to vanish the second Harry tried to get a closer look. At school, Harry had no one. Harry knew that Dooley's gang hated that odd Harry Potter in his baggy old clothes and broken glasses, and nobody liked to disagree with Dooley's gang. Chapter 3. The Letters from No One. The escape of the Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry's his longest ever punishment. By the time he was allowed out of his cupboard again, the summer holidays had started, and Dooley had already broken his new sign camera, crashed his remote control airplane at first time on his racing bike, knocked out old Mrs. Figg as she crossed Privet Drive on her crutches. Harry was glad school was over, but there was no escaping Dooley's gang, who visited the house every day. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm, and Gordon were all big and stupid, but as Dooley was the biggest and stupidest of the lot, he was the leader. The rest of them were all quite happy to join in Dooley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. This was why Harry spent as much time as possible out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the holidays, where he could see a tiny ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to secondary school, and for the first time in his life, he couldn't be with Dooley. Dooley had a place at Uncle Vernon's old school, Smeltings. Piers Polkiss was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High, and the local comprehensive. Dooley thought this was very funny. They stuffed people's heads down the toilet. First day at Stonewall, he told Harry. Want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The poor toilets never had anything as far as your head down it. It might be sick. Then he ran before Dooley could work out and what he said. One day in July, Aunt Petunia took Dooley to London to buy his Smeltings uniform, leaving Harry and Mrs. Figg. Mrs. Figg wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she'd broken her leg tripping on one of her cats, and she didn't quite as fond of them as before. She let Harry watch television and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that never tasted as good as she had had for several years. That evening, Dooley paraded around the living room for the family in his wearing uniform. Smelting's boys wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbockers, and flat straw hats called boulders. They also carried knobbling sticks, hitting each other while the teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later life. As he looked at Dooley in his knickerbockers, Uncle Vernon said gruffly that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears, and she said she couldn't believe it. It was her Uncle Dooleykins. He looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust him to speak. He thought two of his ribs might have been cracked from trying not to laugh. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen next morning when Harry went in for breakfast. He seemed to be coming from a large metal tub at the sink. He went to have a look. The tub was full of what looked like dirty rags swimming in gray water. "What's this?" said Aunt Petunia, her lips tightening as they always did if he dared to ask a question. "Your new school uniform," she said. Harry looked in the bowl again. "Oh," he said, "I didn't realize it had to be so wet." "Don't be stupid." "Sorry," said Aunt Petunia. "I'm dyeing some Dooley's old thing gray for you. It'll look it'll look just like everyone else's when I've finished." Harry seriously doubted this, but thought it was best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about he's going to look at his first day at Stonewall High. Like he was wearing a bits of old elephant skin, probably. The Dooley and Uncle Vernon came in, both with wrinkled noses because of smell from Harry's new uniform. Uncle Vernon opened his newspaper as usual, and 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 Dooley banged on his melting stick, which he carried everything on the table. They heard the click the letterbox. Alright guys, we got about 30 minutes until the update. We're on page 28, chapter 3, Harry Potter, Sorcerer Stone. "And flop the letters on a doormat. Get the post, Dooley," said Uncle Vernon from behind his paper. "Make Harry get it. Get the post, Harry. Make Dooley get it. Poking, poking with your smoke." Dooley. I gotta pause right here. Hold on. Alright. Harry dodged a smelting stick and went to get the post. Three things lay on doormat. A postcard from Uncle Vernon's sister Marge, who was holidaying on the Isle of Wight, and a brown envelope that looked like a bill and a letter for Harry. Harry picked it up and stared at it, and his heart twinging like a giant elastic band. No one ever in his whole life had read it to him. Who would? He had no friends, no relatives. He didn't belong to the library, so he never got rude notes asking for books back. Yeah, he would. Here it was, a letter addressed so plainly there could be no mistake. Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs. 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of yellow parchment, and the address was written in emerald green ink. There was no stamp. Turning the envelope over and handed trembling, Harry saw a purple wax with seal bearing a coat of arms, a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake surrounding a large H. Hurry up, boy, shouted Uncle Vernon from the kitchen. What are you doing checking for letterbox? He chuckled at his own joke. Hold up. Sorry. Harry went back to the kitchen, still staring at his letter. He handed Uncle Vernon the bill and the postcard, sat down, and slowly began to open the yellow envelope. Uncle Vernon whipped open the bill, snorted in disgust, and flipped it over the postcard. Marge's ill. Alright, I'm gonna be right back. Also, I'm gonna be right back for a reason. Give me a minute. Alright, I'm back. He informed Aunt Petunia, ate a funny whelp. Dad, said Dooley suddenly. Dad's Harry. Dad, Harry's got something. Harry was on the point of unfolding his letter, which was written on the same heavy parchment as the envelope, when it was jerked sharply out of his hand by Uncle Vernon. That's Mom. Harry's. I'm back. Who'll be writing to you? Sneered Uncle Vernon, shaking the letter open with one hand, glancing at it. His his face went from red to green faster than a set of traffic lights, and it didn't stop there. Within seconds, it was the grayish white of old porridge. Petunia, he gasped. Alright, I'm back. Dooley tried to grab the letter to read it, but Uncle Vernon held it high out of his reach. Aunt Petunia took it curiously and read the first line. For a moment, it looked as though she might faint. She clutched her throat and made a choking noise. Vernon, oh my goodness, Vernon. They stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dooley were still in the room. Dooley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a sharp tap on the neck with his smelting stick. I want to read that letter, he said loudly. I want to read it, said Harry furiously furiously, as it's mine. Get out, both of you, croaked Uncle Vernon, stuffing the letter back inside his envelope. Harry didn't move. I want my letter. I want my letter, he shouted. Let me. Let me see it, demanded Doodley. Out, roared Uncle Vernon. He took both Harry and Dooley by the scruffs of their necks and threw them into the hall, slamming the kitchen door behind them. Harry and Dooley promptly had a furious but silent fight over who would listen at the keyhole. Dooley won, so Harry, his glasses dangling from one ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen at the crack between the door and the floor. Vernon, Opportunity was saying in a quivering voice, look at the sadness. How could they possibly know where he sleeps? You don't think they're watching the house? Watching? Spying. He might be following us, muttered Uncle Vernon wisely. Well, what should we do, Vernon? Should we ride back? Tell them what we don't want? Harry could see Uncle Vernon's shiny black shoes pacing up and down the kitchen. No, he said finally. No, we'll ignore it. If they don't get an answer. Yes, that's best. We won't do anything. But I'm not having one in the house. Petunia, didn't we swear we took him and we'd stamp out that dangerous nonsense? That evening, we got back from work. Uncle Vernon did something he'd never done before. He visited Harry in his cupboard. Where's my letter? Said Harry, the moment Uncle Vernon had squeezed through the door. Who's writing to me? No one. It was addressed to you by mistake, said Uncle Vernon shortly. I have burned it. It was not a mistake. Harry angrily. It had my cupboard on it. Silence, said young Uncle Vernon, and a couple of spiders fell from the ceiling. He took a few deep breaths and forced his face into a smile which looked quite painful. I'll be right back, guys. Yes, Harry, about this cupboard. Your aunt and I have been thinking. You're really getting a bit big for it. We think you might be nice if you move to Dooley's second bedroom. Why? Said Harry. Don't ask questions, snapped his uncle. Take the stuff upstairs now. The Dursleys' house had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia, one for his visitors, usually Uncle Vernon's sister, Marge, one where Dooley slept and one where Dooley kept all the toys and things that wouldn't fit into his bed for his bedroom. It only took Harry one trip upstairs to move everything he owned from the cupboard to his room. He sat down on the bed and stared around him. Nearly everything in here was broken. The month-old scene camera was lying on top of a small working tank. Dooley had once driven over the next door's dog. In the corner was Dooley's first television set, which he put on his foot through his favorite program and had been canceled. There was a large bird cage which had once held a parrot that Dooley had swatted at school for a rare air rifle, which was up on a shelf, but the and all bent because Dooley had sat on it. Other shelves were full of books. There were only the things in the room that looked as though they had never been touched. From downstairs came the sound of Dooley bawling at his mother. I don't want him there. I need that room. Make him get out. Harry sighed and stretched out on the bed. Yesterday he had been giving anything to be up here. Today he'd rather be back in his cupboard, with that letter than up here without it. Next morning at breakfast, everyone was rather quiet. Dooley was in shock. He screamed, whacked his father with his smelting stick. Bent, bent sick on purpose, kicked his mother, and thrown his tortoise through the greenhouse roof, and still didn't have his room back. Harry was thinking about this time. Yesterday, and bitterly wishing he'd opened the letter in the hall. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia kept looking at each other darkly. When the post arrived, Uncle Vernon, who seemed to be trying to be nice to Harry, made Dooley go and get it. They heard him. They heard him banging things with his smelting stick all the way down the hall. Then he shouted, "There's another one. Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom, 4 Privet Drive." With a strangled cry, Uncle Vernon leaped from his seat and ran down the hall. Harry right behind him. Uncle Vernon had to wrestle Dooley to the ground to get the letter from him, which was made difficult by the fact that Harry had grabbed Uncle Vernon around the neck from behind after a minute of confused fighting, in which everyone got bit a lot by the smelting stick. Uncle Vernon straightened up, gasping for breath, and Harry's letter clutched in his hand. Go to your cupboard, I mean, your bedroom. He wheezed to Harry. Dooley, go. Just go. Rango with a strangle cry. Uncle Vernon leaped from his seat and ran down the hall. Harry right behind him. Uncle Vernon had to wrestle Doodley to the ground to get the letter from him, which was made difficult by the fact that Harry had grabbed Uncle Vernon around the neck from behind. After a minute of confused fighting, in which everyone got hit by the smelting stick, Uncle Vernon straightened up, gasping for breath, with Harry's letter clutched in his hand. Where am I in? Harry walked around in his new room. Someone knew he had moved out of his cupboard, and they seemed to know that he had received his first letter. Surely that meant they'd try again, and this time he'd make sure they didn't fail. He had a plan. And the repaired alarm clock rang at 6 o'clock. The next morning, Harry turned it off and quickly dressed silently. He mustn't wake the Dursleys. He stole downstairs without turning on any of the lights. He was going to wait for the postman on the corner of Privet Drive and get the letter for number 4 first. His heart hammered as he crept across the dark hall toward the front door. Alright guys, we're going to stop it here for today. Alright, so we're going to stop it here for today. If you guys enjoyed this stream and you want to see more of me doing stuff like this, just subscribe. Just like the video and subscribe. Turn on notifications if you like. If you'd like to see more of this, let me know down below in the comments. And I'm gonna put the Greenville stream on a separate stream because I'm getting tired of reading, to be honest with you. So right now the time is it might be backwards for y'all, but the time is, it's gonna be backwards for y'all, but it says it's 12:51. I'm gonna head out, and I'm gonna wait a bit past 1 o'clock for the stream, just so I can like reveal the true update to the game. But for now, we almost hit 100 hours. We did what, an hour and 5 minutes. An hour and 5 minutes. Go ahead, say our final goodbyes to the chat. And I'll see y'all whatever I'm doing next. Have a good one.